Hello, and welcome back to Conquering Finale. My name is Jason Lafredo, and today we are dealing with staff tool strategies again. We are going to be looking at staff groups, hopefully pretty much all that you can know about staff groups in this one video. We'll see how I do here. Now, a staff group is essentially a set of staffs that form its own group that has its own unique set of properties or attributes. Staff groups will generally have a bracket most of the time, like you can see the woodwind instruments have a bracket. So all of these woodwind instruments are all part of one group. You can also have subgroups. So you can see the flute 1 and 2 here is its own group. There's a little sub bracket here. So this is how the groups are broken down. So this is a whole group, and then this is a group here, just the flute 1 and 2. Clarinet 1 and 2 is a group as well. Now, there's other types of attributes that you can have to certain groups, and I'll get into that rather soon. One of them is that the bar lines will actually draw between each one of the staffs. That's actually another group attribute. Now, 99.9% of the time, Finale will set up these groups and brackets the right way if you use the score manager. If you use, add instruments and put it in the right place, Finale will basically know what to do. It knows to put the woodwinds under a large bracket like this, and then any like instruments within these little sub brackets. So 99% of the time, there's really nothing you need to do, but occasionally you may need to manipulate the groups in ways. So I'm going to show you sort of where and how we do that. The main thing that we're going to be dealing with is the group attributes. So let's go into the staff tool and go into the staff menu. And about 2/3 of the way down, there's this thing called groups and brackets. And there's three options here: add, edit, and remove. We're just going to choose edit for now. And this is going to bring up the group attributes dialog box. Now, this is where we're going to define the groups in certain ways. So in the top left corner here, you'll see a pull down menu, and you'll have a list of groups. And all of these groups exist in this score. Now, most of them, except for the piano, basically are bracketed, and it says group and then a number: 4, 7, 8, 9, etc. Now, these numbers always seem to be randomly assigned to me, but don't worry about this. This is just sort of indicating that a certain group exist in a certain place. If you really want to figure out like which group number is actually which group here, there's a way in the staff tool just to choose show default group names. And when you'll do that, you'll actually see those group numbers. So group 8, group 4, group 18. They're a little bit hard to figure out, but basically the group name here will be in the center of the group. So if you can kind of analyze this a little bit, the group 4 is the center of the large group here for the woodwinds. Group 8 is this little mini group of flutes 1 and 2. Group 18 is the subgroup for the clarinets. And there's actually a group on the single bassoon staff, which is why that group, I think that's 27, sort of overlapping the bassoon name. Now, these default group names with the numbers here will never print, so you don't actually have to worry about it. Even if you have this turned on, those names will not print. But anyway, this is a way to figure out, like, okay, group 8 is the subgroup for the flute 1. So now that you have that information, you can go back into here, groups and brackets, edit, and you'll know that you just have to find group 8, and that will be the flutes. Now, there's another easier way to do this right here in the middle, where it will tell you the top staff and bottom staff. This is basically telling you the scope of the group. So with group 8, it's saying that the top of it is flute 1 and the bottom is flute 2. If I were to choose group 4, which I know is the woodwind group, you'll see that it encompasses flute 1 through the bassoon. All right, so that's kind of how this is working here. Now, the ones that get names, the piano one will actually say piano, so that's a lot easier to find. In this case, it will actually show you, default staff names of staff 6 and staff 1 in this case. Again, the way that Finale assigns these staff numbers sometimes is a mystery to me, but basically the right hand is staff 6 and the bottom staff is staff 1 for this piano part. But anyway, it's easier to identify them because you can actually see the name there. But otherwise, just choose the group and you'll be able to see what staves are encompassed in that group. There is sort of an easier way to make sure that you get to the correct group. And if you're in the staff tool, you'll notice that there's a lot of handles in the left corner here. The one that's all the way on the right, that's sort of in line with the top staff line, that is the handle for the staff attributes itself. But it's a little bit hard to see. There's two other handles here, and there's one handle for the staff name, which also will pull up the staff attributes. But these other two in the middle are the handles for the groups. Now, every single bracket will have a a handle at the top and a handle at the bottom. So this is the bottom handle for the woodwind group. There's in the flutes, there's the top one, which is the woodwind group, but there's also the one next to it, which will be the flute subgroup. And there's one at the bottom here for the flute subgroup as well. So with any of these little handles, if you just double click them, it will take you to the group attributes for that particular group, which is important because now it just picks group 8 for me. It knows that that's what I want to deal with. If I had chosen to double click the handle here, which is for the woodwind group, it'll pull up group 4, which is flute 1 through bassoon. That's the larger woodwind group. So that's a little bit of an easier way to make sure you're getting to the correct group attributes. We can also right click these handles for these brackets, and it will show, it'll give you the option to edit group attributes, and you'll get to the same window for the appropriate subgroup in this case. So that's what's going on with these groups and identifying them and figuring out how to make sure you're editing the correct one. So let's talk about what's actually in this window. On the upper right hand corner, there's two options here for all measures and then measure something through something. You may not be aware of this, but you can actually assign groups to just a specific number of measures. Most cases, the groups will be assigned to all measures, so there's usually no reason to change this from all measures, but occasionally you can choose to separate the groups for a certain number of measures because you can set those groups up differently for each measure. If you need a different group name, if you need to do something different with the bar lines or the brackets or something for like a few measures, you can have one group that goes from measures 1 through 16, another group that goes from measures 17 through 21, and then another group that goes from 21 to the end or 22 to the end or something. So it is possible to actually have multiple groups sort of on the same set of staffs if you need to. That's what's going on here. Most of the time, all measures will be set, and that's pretty much all you're going to need to know how to do. Below that, we have option for the full group name, abbreviated name, and if you press these edit buttons, you can type whatever you need to in here for the full and abbreviated names. Now, again, most of the time, just the grand staff instruments are actually going to be using full group names. So in this case, the piano group has a full group name of piano here. And of course, you can edit this if you need to. You can edit the abbreviated name. Now, these are regular text boxes. You can do whatever you need, change the style, size, however you want to set this up. And then there's position buttons here. With this unchecked, Finale is going to use the default position for the group names, but you can check this and reset these individually per group if you need to. I'm rushing through this a little bit because I am going to discuss group and staff names in a video specific to that later on, but this is where you would do that. There's also option here to just simply show the group name. So if you just uncheck this, now all of a sudden Finale is not going to even show the piano group name, as you can see here. So that's what's going on there. We talked about this little section here, which is just showing you the scope of what the group covers. In this case, flute 1 to bassoon. It's very easy to change this. So if you, for whatever reason, you want to change the scope of the subgroup here for flute 1 and 2, for whatever reason you want it to also include the oboe, you just select oboe as the bottom staff, and it will extend that subgroup down to the oboe, as you can see there, hopefully. So, it's very easy to directly edit things like this within the group attributes window. Below that, we have these options for when hiding empty staves. And most of the time, you'll have hide normally selected for a group, particularly with these orchestral groups where you're not showing a group name. You've got this type of bracket or sub-bracket or whatever the case may be. Hide normally just means that when you start hiding staffs, which again is another separate video that I'm going to do later on in this series, it will allow you to hide those staffs individually, one by one. Occasionally, the way that Finale sets up the grand staff instruments, like piano, for example, it sets this option to only hide if all staffs are empty, which is sort of a common practice when you're dealing with grand staff instruments. It's kind of unusual to hide one hand of a grand staff instrument, although there are occasions when it's useful and more practical to do that. If you ever need to hide a single staff within a piano part, you would have to come into the group attributes for that piano instrument and change this from only hide if all staffs are empty to hide normally. This will allow you to hide, one hand for 32 measures if you really needed to. But as I said, when Finale sets up these grand staff instruments, it will choose this option for you. It's sort of a safety thing because it will prevent you from accidentally hiding, a single staff in the piano part, which again, 95% of the time you don't want to do. There's another option here for never hide, which means that if you have this option selected, then any staff within this group could never be hidden. So you might end up trying to hide a staff and it won't ever hide it. Sometimes useful option, but there may or may not be reasons to use that. Next, we have this option for bar lines, and this says draw bar lines, and you have three options here. This is through staves, only on staves, and only between staves. The through staves is really what you're going to be using for most groups. You can see that this is the way that the Finale has the woodwind set up. The bar lines get drawn all the way from the top of the flute through each staff and then through the space in between each staff all the way to the bottom of the bassoon part. This is the normal way to set up orchestral scores. We can change this if you don't want to do it that way. Instead of choosing through staves, just choose only on staves, and you'll see that it will go away, except in this case, the subgroups also have that option checked, so that's why you would see the bar lines drawn through the flutes here, and then not the oboe, but then the clarinets. So there's actually two things going on here. There's two options telling Finale to draw through staves. So that's what's going on there. But normally, you want to draw through staves for your orchestral groups. There is also this option. Let me show you on a different staff here. Well, let me show you the choral staff, because you notice that in the choral groups, the bar lines do not get drawn through the staffs, which is appropriate. You don't want to see these bar lines get drawn here because they will eventually conflict with the lyrics, which is always a problem. So that's why these choral groups will never have this set up. And Finale will do this appropriately. If it sees that you're setting up a choral group, it will choose the only on staves option. There's this other option here, only between staves, which is sort of a unique way of setting up your bar lines. This is also an option that you can choose. And now you can see there's no bar lines in the staffs, but they appear between the staffs instead. So that's what's going on there. It's a special situation, Menserstrich. There you have it. And there's also this use alternate group bar lines. I'm going to gloss over this a little bit because I cover this in depth in video, 19-2B, when I talked about bar lines in the measure tool videos. There's a much more broader discussion of these options here, in particular the draw bar lines and use alternate group bar lines. So I'll refer you to that video, 19-2B, for more info on that. Now, below that, these are the options where we can choose the type of bracket that we're using for a group. And you can see that there's 6 different options: none, a straight line, a bracket with a sort of straight wing. There's the curved bracket that you would use for pianos and stuff like that. And then there's the bracket with the curved wing, and then the square bracket, which will be used for the subgroups. By default, Finale will usually choose one of these 3 options at the end here. But if you wanted to do something different for this choral group, for example, you could choose the straight line here instead of the curved wing bracket style, and get a different type of bracket line here. So that's another option as well. Or you could choose the straight wings, which would look like that. The straight wings are a little bit meager, in my opinion. They don't really show much of it, but that's what you got there. And, of course, you could go back to the regular one that Finale will usually choose, which is those sort of curved wings. Or you could always choose none. A group does not have to have a bracket, so sometimes choosing none is the appropriate answer if you need to do something unique with the groups. When you do not have a bracket, by the way, you'll see a random handle that will appear sort of in the middle of the group. This appears because this will allow you to actually go into and edit the group attributes again. Otherwise, you wouldn't have anything to double click. And we can go into there and see the group attributes for that. So we can choose our regular bracket if we want to. Now above this, there's this option to show bracket if group contains only one staff. Generally speaking, if you're hiding staffs or something and you get down to one staff in a section, it's not usual to see the bracket there. But you can show that if you really want to. So if you have this option checked, it's not going to affect anything off the bat until you start hiding staffs. And then if you happen to keep hiding and you only end up with one staff, then you would actually see that bracket. I can show you that real quick. So we'll just go in here and hide empty staffs. Again, this is a video later on. Of course, let's show the bracket for this woodwinds, and then we'll do that again, and we'll hide the empty staffs here. And now you can see that the solo bassoon line here will now have a bracket. Again, if I were to set that setting so that it does not show bracket if only one staff, then obviously it does just that. So that's those are your options there. And then the other options in there on the bottom right corner here have to do with the spacing of the brackets themselves. And I think I might have done something here. That should be 0. The distance from left edge of staff, this is exactly what that is. It's allowing the brackets room to breathe between the left bar line and the start of the bracket there. So we can always change that if we wanted that to be a little bit higher. Do something like that, 0.8, 0.08, and you'll see it get a lot farther away. The options here, vertical adjustment, top of bracket, bottom of bracket. If you choose a positive number, the bracket will go upwards. If you choose a bottom number, that end of the bracket will go downwards, if that makes sense. So with this vertical adjustment top of bracket, if I put in a value of 0.2 here, got to scroll up to the top of the bracket, you'll see that the bracket gets put really far above the flute staff there. This can be negative 2 as well if you want to, and that would put it sort of in the middle of the staff. So, you would never use numbers that large, however, but if you wanted to make some subtle adjustments to, how far over that wing spills on the staff, you can certainly do that. Now, by default, this value here, distance from left edge, is set to 0.04167, and that is related to a setting in the document options under piano braces and brackets on the bottom section here. Default distance from left edge of staff. This is that same value, and you can see it negative 0.04167. That's what's allowing Finale to put that bracket a little to the left of the bar line by default. When Finale sets up sub brackets, you'll see that it will actually double that value for this little sub-bracket here, or the subgroup, to 0.0833. Now, this will be set up automatically. If you try and add a subgroup with that sub-bracket, it will not add that value for you. So you would actually have to add that, or change this distance from left edge to double that value to get that sub-bracket a little bit farther to the left. So that's essentially the group attributes. That's exactly what's going on here. There's a lot you can do with the groups, but before I go much further here, what I want to talk about is actually adding and removing groups, because we can do that manually. Like I said, 99.9% of the time, Finale will set this up correctly for you, but if you ever need to add a group, there's some things that you can do. So let's start with, let's see, what should we do here? I think let me just actually delete a group, because otherwise how would I add a group, because there's groups everywhere here. So let's say I just deleted that group for the choral. So let's say I want to add that group back. The best way to do this is just click to the left of the first staff, hold down shift, click to the left of the bottom staff that you want the group to apply to. And when you do that, it will select those staffs all the way through to the end of the score. And with those staffs selected, you can just go to the Staff tool, Groups and Brackets, Add. And when you do that, it's going to add a group. It's going to call this Group 1 this time. And you'll see that the range is set up, soprano through bass. And also in the top right, it says All Measures, because that's what you selected. You selected all of the measures. And from here, you can choose the appropriate brackets and then set these as you want. Now, again, with these choral groups, we're going to want to make this change here where we're only showing on the staffs, right? So this is how I'm going to set up my choral groups. Now I just got that group back that I just deleted. The other way to do this is, with those groups selected, just right-click the staff handle here, and there is an option for Add Group and Bracket, and this will add it for all of the measures selected, and you'll see that the range gets selected correctly, soprano to bass, all measures, and again, do the same thing, choose the right bracket, choose the right bar line setting in this case, and voila, you get the same exact situation. Now, as I mentioned, if you want to add a subgroup, let's say for some reason I'm going to add a subgroup to the tenor and bass staffs here, add group in brackets. We can choose a subgroup, but again, just be careful about this distance from left edge of staff. It's going to set up as the default value, which is not going to be enough. If you click OK here, what's going to happen is that bracket is going to be sort of overlapping the bracket that exists there. So just be careful to do this. Add the subgroup or the subbracket, and then double this value. So 833 should do the trick. And again, with these subgroups, you do want to make sure that it's set up the same way in this choral situation. So just make sure you have only on staves here. And now you can have a subgroup added as well. Now, just to show you that this is something that can be done, I'm just going to delete these groups again. And I mentioned that the groups can be applied to only a certain amount of measures. So if I do something like select the first measure here for the soprano and the last measure of the system for the bass, so now I've only got these 8 measures selected for the chorus. Then I can do it up here if I want, groups and brackets add. You'll see that it will select the appropriate range for staff, soprano through bass, but it will also choose this option here for measures, and it will give me that range, 1 through 8. So now I can choose my bracket for here, choose my only on staffs or bar lines, and you'll see that the bracket will only appear on the first system. So what I've done is I've only applied a group to these 8 measures and only those 8 measures. If you see anywhere beyond that, the bracket does not exist, the group does not exist, right? And so you can go and select the second system and set up a different group if you want. So now I can choose add groups and brackets, and I can choose this bracket instead. Again, let's choose the only between staves option, just to show you that you can have something completely different here. So now you can see that, in the first system, you have the bracket here with the bar lines in this way, and then the second system is completely different, and then the third system, there is no group. So again, these groups can be sort of individualized on a measure-by-measure basis. So, just be aware that that's possible. It's not practical 100% of the time, but there are some rare cases where this is actually handy to do. So, just knowing that you can do it is actually is a really good thing. So we talked about adding groups. How about deleting groups? So this gets a little bit not complicated, but interesting in a way. Again, with deleting groups, the range of measures that you select is also important, just as it is with adding them. So if I wanted to delete the choral group here, for the whole score, again, I would have to choose all of the instruments, all of the staffs for the entire score, and then go into staff, groups and brackets, remove, and it will remove those groups for the entire score. If I had only selected, these 8 bars and I chose to remove groups, it would remove the group just for these 8 bars, but it would take that group and basically start applying it to the 9th bar. So, the range in which you're selecting these measures to delete the groups is important. However, what's not so important is that you can just choose a couple instruments. If I were to just choose a soprano, alto, and choose remove group, it will remove the whole group. So it's not like it's going to change the staff scope of the group. However, it will respect the fact that I've only selected 8 measures. So on the 9th measure, the group will start over again. And also, it will not discern whether or not you're deleting the large group or the subgroup. So if I were to do that same thing with the flutes here, tried to remove groups, it would remove all groups. So not only would the whole woodwind group go away, but also the woodwind subgroup. And interestingly, it would leave the subgroup for the clarinets here. So, just be careful when you're deleting these groups that you do it in the right way. And there's another way to do this without going into that menu. You can just choose, without having anything selected, just choose one of the handles here and choose to remove, delete group. And that whole group will go away for the entire score, by the way. So you're not just deleting, just that particular bracket. You may have noticed there's another option here called delete bracket. And when you delete the bracket actually goes away, but the group remains. So now you'll see this middle handle here, which will, show you that you do have a group for flute 1 and 2. It's just that now instead of this bracket being chosen, you have the none option checked here. So there's two different options when you do this: either delete the bracket or delete the whole group. Just make sure you know what you're doing. Personally, the easiest way to delete groups, in my opinion, is to just select one of these handles. If I were to just select that handle and press the delete key, essentially it does the same thing. It deletes that group entirely. It will never appear in any of those measures again. So, I think the best thing to do is just, select the handle and press delete, and that will get rid of the whole group. And the last thing I want to talk about, I know this video is getting long in the tooth right now, but this is important, has to do with linked parts. So I'm going to go into my linked piano part here, and my piano part has a group, as you can see, the squiggly brackets with the group name. The thing to know about this is that when you add instruments in Finale, if you're adding an instrument like a piano, a grand staff instrument that has a group name, essentially what happens is that if all of the staffs within the group get added to a part, and in the case of the piano, that's exactly the case. The whole group gets added to the part. What Finale will do is essentially copy the group settings from the score and place it into the part. However, once that group gets put into the part, the groups are completely independent between the part and the score. So essentially, I'm in the piano part here. This is an independent group. If I were to go to the group attributes for the piano part here, in fact, you'll only see the piano as an option here because this is the only group that exists in this particular linked part. However, the settings here are completely unique. So if I were to decide to not show the group name in the parts, which is probably what I would do in this instance, that will not affect what happens in the score. You see in the score, the piano still appears. So that's kind of important to understand that once the linked part has been generated, the groups becomes completely independent. Whatever you have set, if you were to do some unique things with creating, generating your own unique parts with certain groups and everything, once you do that, it will initially copy whatever settings you have for that group into the linked part, but then again, they become completely independent. So if you were to do something like change the name of the piano part here, let's say we're going to call this piano 2 or something, piano 2A, for the heck of it. You can change the name here in the score, but because these parts are now independent of each other, going back to the piano part here, it will still say piano. So if you really needed to do something like that, you would actually have to change it in two different places, piano 2A, in order for that to work. All right. Otherwise, again, with these grand staff groups, I prefer not to show the group names in the parts. So for me, I would just uncheck that and, be done with it. You never have to see that in the part again, but it will still appear in the score as you need it to. So that, in a very big nutshell, is staff groups in Finale. Again, there's a lot to it. I thought I could do it in one video. I think I did. A very long video at that, but there you go. I'm going to do a couple more videos on groups about a couple specific situations. The next one is going to have to do with organs. Finale will set up a 3-staff organ group in a specific way, and I just want to show you a few little tricks to manipulate that if you need to kind of do something different with it. So, all right, so once again, thanks for watching. My name is Jason. Don't forget to subscribe, and yeah, I will see you soon on the next video.